When I pulled into the driveway that Thursday afternoon, I immediately knew something was wrong. The garage door was open, wide open, and my mother-in-law, Lorraine, was standing inside like she owned the place. She was holding a thick wad of cash in one hand and wearing that self-satisfied smile she always reserved for moments she thought she was being clever. It was the kind of smile that made my stomach twist, the kind that usually preceded disaster. "Avery!" she called, waving the bills like a trophy. "Perfect timing, sweetheart. I have wonderful news." I parked my Civic slowly, my eyes scanning the garage behind her. The air smelled faintly of motor oil, and the corner where my Cobra usually sat looked wrong. Too empty, too clean. I stepped out, my legs moving before my mind could catch up. "Where's the Cobra?" I asked, my voice low, already bracing for the answer I knew I wouldn't want. Lorraine's grin widened. "Oh, that old thing? I sold it. A nice young man came by earlier and took it off your hands for $3,000 cash. Isn't that fantastic?" The world tilted. I felt it physically shift beneath me. For years I'd spent on that car, my 1967 Shelby Cobra 427. It wasn't just a hobby, it was a lifeline, a connection to my grandfather, a masterpiece in progress, one of only 348 ever made, and she'd called it that old thing. "You sold it," I repeated, staring at the void where the Cobra used to be. "Yes," she said, clearly proud of herself. "For your own good, of course. It's not exactly appropriate for a woman your age to be wasting her weekends in a garage full of tools and grease. Honestly, Avery, it was a little embarrassing. You should be focusing on more suitable things, maybe gardening or yoga. Something feminine." I didn't answer. I couldn't. Not yet. My mind was spinning too fast. She held the cash close to her chest, still beaming. And the best part? That nice boy even took those dusty old tools that were just cluttering up the place. What a sweet gesture, right? My hands clenched at my sides. Those dusty old tools were my grandfather's, a full, snap-on collection. Over 3 decades of racing and restoration work passed down to me when he died. Tools that were irreplaceable, just like the car. "Lorraine," I said, my tone as calm as I could manage, "do you have any paperwork? A bill of sale?" "Of course," she chirped. "I'm not careless, you know." She pulled a folded piece of lined notebook paper from her purse and handed it to me like she was giving me a birthday card. "Everything's perfectly legal." I unfolded it with shaking fingers. No signature from me. No printed name of the buyer. No license number. No ID verification. Just a first name scrawled in uneven handwriting, David, and the amount, $3,000. Did you at least get his full name? A phone number? License plate? She waved dismissively. "He paid in cash, dear. That's all that matters." "Really? Avery, you should be thanking me." I stared at her, and then something inside me snapped back into place. Not rage, not grief, something colder, sharper. "You're absolutely right, Lorraine," I said smoothly, folding the paper and slipping it into my pocket. "Thank you for taking care of this for me." The flicker of confusion on her face was almost worth it, as Lorraine busied herself rearranging the remaining items in the garage, holding socket wrenches like she'd never seen one before. I stepped quietly into the corner where the Wi-Fi signal was strongest. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a name I hadn't called in years but never deleted. Detective Fiona Caldwell. V'day met in collège. I was one of 2 women in my mechanical engineering cohort. She was one of 3 in the criminal justice track. We shared cafeteria lunches, late-night rants about professors, and a shared understanding of what it felt like to be underestimated. She picked up on the second ring. "Avery." Her voice was immediately alert. "Is everything okay?" "I need to report a theft," I said softly. A pause. "What happened?" "My mother-in-law sold my Cobra, the 427. The one I was prepping for Barrett Jackson. The silence on the line stretched. Then a slow, low whistle. Jesus, you mean the Cobra? The one you rebuilt from a shell? Yes. She listed it on Craigslist. Sold it for $3,000 cash. Gave away the tools too. No title, no ID, just a handwritten bill of sale. She swore under her breath. That's not just a mistake. That's grand theft, Avery. You need to send me everything you've got. I will. And I'm so sorry. I know what that car meant to you. She knew, because I had told her years ago about the barn find in Sedona, about the rusted frame that sat under a tarp in a collapsing shed, about how I'd driven 300 miles with a rented trailer and a pounding heart, about how it wasn't just a car. It was his car. My grandfather had driven a Hemi Cuda, but the Cobra? That was his dream machine. When he passed, he left me his tools and a box of letters scribbled with diagrams and parts lists. I used them like a map. Every weekend, I buried myself in that garage, learning, restoring, failing, trying again. I rebuilt the engine from scratch. I hunted down original parts across the country. I studied old blueprints. I joined restoration forums under a fake name just to avoid condescension. For years of work, for years of sweat, for years of quiet therapy in chrome and torque and grease. And now it was gone. I turned around slowly, watching Lorraine pick through my shelves like she was arranging flower vases. She picked up a torque wrench, turned it the wrong way, and set it down with a little laugh. Oh dear, some of these are heavier than they look. I didn't respond. My mind was elsewhere, running VIN numbers, recalling the serial stamp on the engine block, mentally listing every part number I'd logged. I'll just tidy up a bit while you finish whatever business you're doing, she said sweetly, dusting off my bench with her hand like she was prepping a buffet table. Take your time, dear. I nodded and stepped outside. The late afternoon sun hit my face like a slap. The garage, once my sanctuary, now looked foreign, violated, empty. I texted Fiona the details from the bill of sale and a photo of the paper. She responded in seconds. Got it. Working on it now. Then I stood there for a long time, just watching the oil stain on the floor where the Cobra had rested. It was shaped like a question mark. Fitting, I thought, because that was all I had left. Questions. Derek arrived the next evening, trailing the scent of hotel soap and airport lounges. He tossed his suitcase in the hallway and loosened his tie, talking before he even saw me. You would not believe the pitch meeting in Chicago, he said, pulling open the fridge for a beer. They practically signed the contract on the spot. We're definitely getting that account. I was in the kitchen, stirring a pot of pasta sauce. I didn't look up. He popped the cap and took a sip. Mom told me about the car situation. Honestly, probably for the best. Maybe now we can use the garage for storage like normal people. I turned the stove to low and faced him. Derek, I said calmly, that car was worth $400,000. He froze mid-sip. What? It was a 1967 Shelby Cobra 427, one of 348 ever produced. I'd restored it to auction quality. It was appraised 2 months ago. The color drained from his face. He set the beer down slowly, hand suddenly unsteady. You never told me it was worth that much. You never asked. He stared at me like I'd just grown a second head. Are you serious? I spent 4 years rebuilding it, I said. Every weekend. Every spare hour. You've seen me out there, covered in grease, welding parts, rebuilding the engine. But you thought it was just a cute hobby. Something quirky your wife did instead of shopping. He ran a hand through his hair. Mom said it was just an old project car. She thought she was helping. Helping. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. She sold something that didn't belong to her, to a stranger, for a fraction of what it was worth. She gave away my grandfather's tools, tools that have been in my family for generations. He took a step back like he needed physical distance from the truth. Can we get it back? I don't know, I said. I've reported the theft. My friend Fiona is running the buyer's info, but the guy gave a fake name. No license, no address. Probably a professional flipper who scouts Craigslist for undervalued classics. Oh, God. Derek sat down heavily on a stool. Oh, God, what are we going to do? I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in months. The tailored shirt, the polished shoes, the watch he wore like armor. He looked successful, stable, put together, but he also looked clueless. I leaned against the counter and folded my arms. We're not going to do anything, Derek. He blinked. What do you mean? I'm going to keep working with the police to track the car. You're going to have a long conversation with your mother about boundaries and the legal consequences of what she's done. He opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. And you're going to start asking yourself why, in 6 years of marriage, you never once cared enough to ask what I was building. The silence between us was thick, heavy. For the first time, I saw something flicker in Derek's eyes that looked a lot like fear, but maybe it was recognition. The next morning, my phone rang just as I stepped into my office. I shut the door behind me and answered on the first ring. I found your car, Fiona said, skipping any preamble. My knees nearly buckled. I sat down hard in my chair. Where? Scottsdale. A private collector named Philip Granger bought it yesterday from a classic car dealer. Paid $250,000. My heart clenched. $250, that's less than the appraised value. He thinks it needs work, she said. The dealer probably told him it was a half-finished restoration. But here's the good news, Granger's legit. Real collector, not a flipper. When I explained the situation, he was horrified. He's willing to cooperate. What does that mean? It means we can prove the chain of theft. Granger has documentation from the dealer. The dealer has sales records from the guy who called himself David Johnson. And we have Lorraine's bill of sale. The paper trail is clean. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. My office suddenly felt smaller, but safer. So we can get it back. We can get it back, Fiona confirmed. Granger's insurance will reimburse him. The dealer's already agreed to cooperate to avoid charges. We've looped in Scottsdale PD, and they're coordinating with our team. The car's being held as evidence for now. How long will it take? A few weeks, maybe. Depends on paperwork, but it's not going anywhere. I covered my eyes with one hand. My fingers were trembling. Thank you, Fiona. Just promise me one thing, she said. When this is over, I get a ride in whatever beast you build next. I laughed for the first time in days. Deal. That afternoon, in the middle of a client meeting about bridge load testing, my phone buzzed with a text from Derek. Mom told me you overreacted. Honestly, this might be a blessing. That car was becoming an obsession. I stared at the screen. The message hit like a slap, not because it was cruel, but because it was so normal, so dismissive, as if 4 years of work, of memory, of legacy could be reduced to a weekend hobby I needed to grow out of. I didn't respond. Later that evening, I found him in the living room, flipping through channels like nothing had happened. Derek, I said. He muted the TV. Yeah. They found the car. It's safe, being held as evidence in Scottsdale. He nodded slowly. That's good news. I looked at him carefully. Philip Granger paid $250,000 for it. You still think it was just a phase? He didn't answer. It'll come back to me, I continued. But that doesn't erase what your mother did, or how easily you dismissed everything I poured into that car. His eyes dropped to the floor. He looked like a man who'd finally realized the storm had already passed, but everything around him was soaked. The dining room was quiet except for the soft ticking of the antique clock on the wall. Derek sat across from me, his face pale and drawn. The sleeves of his shirt were rolled up, but his hands kept wringing together in nervous little knots. He hadn't said much all day. I suspected he was waiting for his mother to fix this, like she always did. Lorraine arrived 10 minutes late, wearing a cream cardigan and her usual smug expression. She breezed in like she was walking into a book club. "I don't understand why we need a formal meeting," she said, setting her purse down. "I already explained everything to Derek." "You explained your version," I said evenly. "Now you're going to hear mine." She sat unbothered. "I sold that old car for a very reasonable price, Avery. I don't see what the fuss is about. It was just sitting there collecting dust. You weren't even driving it." "It wasn't ready to drive," I said, "because I was restoring it to exact historical specifications. Do you know what that means?" She sniffed. "It means you were wasting time." I opened the tablet I'd brought and turned it to face her. This is what it looked like when I found it. The first photo showed the Cobra as a rusted skeleton in a barn. No wheels, no engine, no seats. Lorraine scoffed. "Exactly. Junk." I swiped to the next photo. This was after I blasted the body and started bodywork. The lines were clean, the frame straightened, primer fresh. Next came the engine rebuild. Dozens of pieces arranged methodically on the bench. The 427 block gleamed under fluorescent light. Then the interior, hand-stitched seats, polished original gauges, a dashboard so pristine it could have come off the line yesterday. And finally, the fully assembled car, chrome flawless, paint deep and glossy, every inch a resurrection of something rare and beautiful. "This," I said, tapping the screen, "is what you sold. For $3,000. Lorraine stared at the photos, color draining from her face. I didn't realize. You didn't ask," I said. "You assumed you knew better. You decided your opinion about what was valuable mattered more than mine. And you gave it away to a thief." "A thief?" "The man you sold it to gave a fake name, fake address, fake phone number. The police traced the car through a dealership in Arizona to a private collector. We were lucky. If he'd flipped it again, it would have disappeared forever." She blinked at me, stunned. "Do you understand what you did?" I asked quietly. "That car was worth $400,000. You sold it without permission. That's felony theft." Lorraine looked from me to Derek. "She's exaggerating. I didn't mean to steal anything. I was trying to help." "The district attorney doesn't care about your intentions," I said. "They care about the law. And theft of property over $100,000 is a first-degree felony." Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. "They wouldn't really prosecute me, would they?" "Charges are being reviewed. The paperwork is in motion." Derek buried his face in his hands. "Mom, what did you do?" Lorraine whispered. "I thought it was just an old car, and I thought you were just a meddling woman with no respect for boundaries," I said. "Turns out you're also a criminal." The room fell into stunned silence. Over the next 2 weeks, the case moved faster than I expected. Fiona worked with the district attorney's office and the Scottsdale PD to finalize statements, verify documentation, and establish the chain of custody. The dealer who'd sold the Cobra to Granger agreed to testify in exchange for immunity. The paper trail from Lorraine's scribbled bill of sale through the fake buyer to the dealer was airtight. Lorraine was charged with theft of property over $100,000. First-degree felony. She was stunned when she got the notice. Derek tried to downplay it, call it an overreaction, but the law didn't care about family politics. The law cared about proof, and we had plenty. Eventually, she accepted a plea deal. 5 years probation, community service, and a legally binding restitution agreement. Of course, she'd never be able to repay even a fraction of the car's value. She had no assets, no job, just outrage and pride, and now a criminal record. The damage to our family, though, couldn't be negotiated. Derek and I tried therapy. Once. He sat in the corner of the office, arms crossed. eyes defensive, repeating lines like, "But she didn't mean to steal it, and it's just a car." After the session, I asked him one question. If it had been your $400,000 investment, your client, your pitch, your name on the contract, and my father had come in and sold it without your permission, would you still say it was just a client? He didn't answer. He didn't need to. We both knew the truth. We separated a month later. It was strangely calm, like releasing a knot that had been tight for years. He kept the house with its silent, empty garage. I took what tools remained from my grandfather's collection and moved into a modest house outside of Lyons, Colorado, a little further from town, a little closer to peace. The Cobra, by some miracle, had come back to me intact. Granger had stored it properly, even had his mechanic do a full inspection. The car had survived its ordeal without a scratch. But I hadn't. I couldn't even look at it without tasting bile in my throat. I sold it, this time properly through Barrett-Jackson, with full documentation, verified provenance, and a room full of hungry collectors. It brought in $420,000. I didn't cry when it rolled off the auction platform. I didn't smile either. I just watched it disappear into the hands of someone who knew what it was, who saw it for what it had become. With that money, I bought a smaller house with a 2-car garage, a view of the mountains, and a deep breath of quiet. And then I went looking, not for vengeance, not for restoration, but for something older, something simpler. I found it in a dusty barn 20 minutes from my new place, a 1970 Plymouth Cuda, faded plum paint, flat tires, and a windshield caked in dust. Not rare, not priceless, but familiar. My grandfather had taught me to drive in a car just like it. This one wasn't for Barrett-Jackson. It wasn't for anyone else's approval. This one was for me. On weekends now, I leave the garage door open. Not because I want company, but because the light feels good on my back while I work. The new place sits at the edge of town, tucked into a quiet road that winds up a small hill. The air smells like pine. The neighbors wave when they walk their dogs. A few have stopped by to ask what I'm working on. They're always surprised. Some ask where my husband is. I just smile and say, I live alone. The Cuda sits in the middle of the space, stripped down and half disassembled. Its plum-colored shell gleams faintly, even under the fluorescent lights. It still has a long way to go, but that's the point. The process is the reward now. I keep my grandfather's tools arranged exactly the way he taught me. Wrenches, calipers, torque sets, all lined up on a wall pegboard. Every piece has a story. Every stain has meaning. Sometimes I catch myself humming while I work. No one watches me here. No one critiques the grease under my nails. No one asks me to stop being too much or not enough. Derek texts once in a while, holidays, birthdays, anniversaries he remembers out of habit. He says he's seeing someone new. She appreciates the finer things, he wrote once. I responded, I'm glad. And I was. Lorraine hasn't contacted me since the plea deal. She sends apologies through Derek, like guilt relayed through satellite. I don't respond. There's nothing left to say. Last month, Fiona stopped by on her way back from a court appearance in Denver. She walked straight into the garage, ran her fingers along the Cuda's fender, and let out a low whistle. This color is wild, she said. Looks like a bruise that decided to shine. I laughed. Took me weeks to settle on it. You think this one will be better than the Cobra? I leaned against the workbench and wiped my hands with an old shop rag. Different goals this time. The Cobra was about proving I could build something flawless. This one's about remembering why I ever wanted to. She nodded. Revenge through reinvention. Something like that. We stood in silence for a while, just listening to the soft hum of life outside. Wind in the trees, a dog barking in the distance, the faint hiss of cooling metal. The Cuda will take time. I'm not rushing it. I handpick every part. I sand each panel myself. I've got time now. No one is waiting for me to be done so they can claim credit. No one is trying to sell it out from under me. I've learned something that I didn't know back when this all began. When someone steals from you, they don't just take what you built. They take what you believed about yourself, your control, your purpose, your worth. And the only way to get it back is to build something new, something undeniably yours. That's what this car is. Not a replacement for the Cobra, not a statement to the world, not even an answer to Lorraine, just a quiet declaration to myself. I know what I'm worth now,